Alice Wright and Bertha Lee Rhines. Bertha Lee is not here today. She's in Minneapolis, and Evelyn's going to give us some reflections on her. But there are a couple of things I do remember about Uncle Nesmus. One, he was always at our house for every holiday. He's hilarious. He always let me know stories about my dad. And he always reminded me of the great things my dad had done for him as he was trying to get started. And he continues to allow me to know that today. So he's given me reflections of my own dad that have been very, very helpful to me. The other thing that I remember him doing, and it's really been in the last, let's say, 20 years or so, he's always shared a tad bit of wisdom that's been very valuable to me. And generally, he would say, yeah, I didn't do this, but. And these were very, very valuable pieces of information. And even when my wife got sick, and he had some real reflections about that situation and what I was going through with that situation. And so my Uncle Nesmus was my dad's younger brother. And he moved to St. Louis at some point. What Uncle Nesmus will always say is that my dad gave him his first suit on his back as he came from Mississippi. And my mom tells the story of Uncle Nesmus coming to the front door. For all you young people, we didn't have cell phones back then. So he showed up unannounced from Mississippi. And I guess he had like, I guess a processed hairdo or something. And my dad looked out the window and wouldn't let him in because he didn't know who he was. And my mom said, Vic, this is the way she tells Vic, that's your brother. You got to let him in the door. But he wouldn't let him in at first because he had this processed hairdo. And so these stories cracked me up when they started to tell me about him. And hopefully, if you don't know Uncle Nesmus, tomorrow you'll get an opportunity to meet him. But I've always appreciated the wisdom he's been willing to share as an older man. None of us are perfect. And so when you get older, one of the best things you can do for somebody younger is share wisdom. Share something that you learned along the way so they won't necessarily bump their heads or some piece of wisdom that you can utilize. So I thank Uncle Nesmus for that. Hopefully you all get a chance to get to know him tomorrow. Evelyn?
How are you guys doing? Good. Liars. Anyhow, I want to start off first by saying thank you. My name's Evelyn Rhines, and I'm the daughter, the knee baby of Bertha Lee Rhines, and Bertha happens to be the knee baby of her family, me the second youngest child. But what I want to first start off by saying is I'm going to try and be short, like my height, and like my mom. And I would just like anybody that's under the age of 25 to stand up.
25, stand up.
Stand up.
No.
I'm up.
The reason why I want you guys to stand up is I want you guys to really tune in and just listen. I know how easy it is just to kind of doze off and not listen or anything, but this is really about our history. And I wish I would have learned and listened a lot more when I was younger about these things, because they're not going to teach you about our history in school. You have to learn it from your elders, and I'm not an elder. But you need to just listen to some of these stories and find out where you are from and your tree and all that. So just tune in. I know things are going to be over here pretty quick. You guys can get back to social media and all that, but just hang tight. But my mom couldn't make it, or refused to make it. She's not a plain person, so we came from Minneapolis. And I tried my best to try and get her to come. You know, as you age and get up in years, you're kind of set in your ways, and that she does things a lot slower, and that gets around and doesn't like to be a burden. But I know my parents made a lot of sacrifice for me, and my sisters and my brother. My mom started working after my youngest sister, Pam, was in school, teaching preschool and Sunday school and all that. But I know that for my mom, she never ever, and my dad, I think my dad may have missed maybe one game, never ever missed one of our sporting games. When I didn't want to be at the college that I was at on the weekends, my dad and my mom would come and pick me up, drive the 78 miles, which is like really just down the road for you guys here, and pick me up to come to church because I didn't like where I was at and decided not to continue playing collegiate softball. So I really treasure the time that my parents really set aside and decided to be really allow my mom to stay at home and raise the kids. I appreciate my dad really doing that. And I just say, really don't take things for granted. I know that I did along the way, and we didn't grow up with a lot of money or anything like that, but I definitely would say that I'm spoiled, and I'm truly blessed now. So I know I'm going to try and get my mom to come to the next one, and my brother and older sisters as well. But thank you very much.
Now, I ain't very out right here on the stage, but I think Ron's going to come up and share some of his favorite thoughts about his mom. Bless you, how are you? Good. So, I am Ronald Wright. I am the only son of Mary Alice Wright, Mary Alice Boston. She's the baby girl of the family. And so I want to tie together, hopefully, 3 things for you as I just been listening to things and been thinking about, talking about somebody I love, right, on stage. The first thing I would tie for you together is the word faith. And I would really use the Greek word of that, which is believing. You're going to see that tie into some of the things I'm going to share. The second thing I want you to get about the Boston family is strength. I really want you to just think about that as I tie through it. I'm going to be brief, quick, we'll get to it. The last one I want you to really tie into your mind when you think about our family and what it represents is sacrifice. And so I'm going to talk about the woman I love, the woman that raised me, Mary Alice Boston Wright. 1937, right? All right, I got that right. So that was good. November 21st is the date that we celebrated for like over 60 years, right? Because that's the date that her mother told her that she was born. And then one day she was trying to get a passport and had to actually go get her birth certificate. Remember, they had midwives. Yeah. And so when the birth certificate said 11/22, and so she had to change everything. Now it's messed our whole family up. Half of them think it's on the 21st, but it's on the 22nd, so we don't know which day to celebrate. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how can I tie things together from my perspective and how the family dynamic has impacted my life. And Sister Martin, when she called me, she helped me to tie it together because she told me an incident that's going to tie together, hopefully, throughout my time of talking today. She told me of an incident of my grandmother, who I call Grandma. I didn't even know her name was Bertha. I just called her Grandma. You couldn't call people by their name. You called me Grandma or Uncle or something like that. So, Grandma Bertha was actually holding my mother at 3 months. And supposedly, Dad looked over at Mom and said, "How that baby girl doing?" He said, "She's doing all right." And then he turned it over, he fell asleep. So my mom didn't really know her dad. At 3 months of age, her dad died. And I want to show you how this weaves through as far as the sacrifice. So Bertha, my grandmother, actually married a gentleman named Mr. Frank. And so I'll talk a little bit about my time coming to Mississippi because unlike everybody else, I love coming to Mississippi. I just had a few problems with Mississippi. The first problem was you couldn't get a bath except for that little tub thing that they get you in.
Right, right.
Come on now.
Yes,
come on.
yes.
Everybody talking about how much they love stuff. I was like, I love it. Some things I didn't love, right?
Yeah.
At first, you had to wait in hot water again. Like, man, how long get the hot water? You hope it stay in there long enough so you get you a good splunge bath. That's what they call it, right? When the splunge tub bath, that was the first one.
Yep.
And then when you stayed with Mr. Frank and Bertha Lee, right? They didn't have no indoor amenities.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So number 1 was okay, but number 2 was in trouble. So I would wait a lot of time because Charles, he had an indoor place, right? So they would say, a couple of days we can go down to Charles. So by day 2, I was sick. When we going to Charles again, right? So that was my number 2 thing that I had a problem with coming to Mississippi. My 3rd thing was my first switch whipping was in Mississippi. And my mother was spanking me. And grandma looked at her and said, well, you need to go get a switch for that boy. You know what she did? She listened to her mama. She went and got a switch and she gave me those are the 3 things. But I love coming down here like everybody else. When we came down, we spent a month here. And so I spent a lot of time here getting to know people and hanging out and just having fun. There was a little young gentleman across the road from us that had a basketball net. And so I would go over there and we would battle every time. It seemed like day in and day out for 20 or 30 days. My mom grew up here, and at the age of 17, she decided to go to Chicago. And probably the biggest reason for my mom leaving here, when we talked about this, was she did not like cotton picking. And so she left, think about this now, at 17 to Chicago to live with Mr. Frank's people for a little while. She didn't know hardly anybody in Chicago. But at 17, she decided to make that trek, as Byron talked, to move out. Eventually, she got married to my dad, which is Donald Jean Wright, and that's how you eventually get me. I had an older brother that died early, and I really want to talk about that because that was something that, even though it was a tragedy in our family, my mom never harped on that. You know, it was nothing that, you know, we had a picture and everything up of him. We respected his life and other things like that, but she moved on in faith in the Word. As you've heard about the Bostons, right, they love God and love His Word. And so I was in church 4 times a week, right? I was at teachers' meeting, I was at choir practice, I was at the Usher board meeting, I was at all these different meetings every week. And then on Sundays, right, if there was a program afterwards, I was there till 3 or 4 o'clock on the program. If my dad stayed around, at least stay with my dad and listen to the Bears game in the car, right? Because that's where he was at. So I definitely was a church boy. My mom was always faithful to serve. I can remember a time where grandma got sick and my mother brought her to Chicago. And I mean, by the time my grandmother got to Chicago, she was pretty bad. And my mom and my dad did the things that got her connected with the hospital that my dad worked at, and they got her better, right? And when she finally got better, we thought she would be staying in the Chicago area with her, but you know what she wanted to do? She come back to Mississippi. And it was probably a month or a month and a half after that, she died. But what it taught me as a young person was, I saw how the family worked together. I saw how they got her back and her believing wholeness to get back to the soul of Mississippi. I saw the strength, I saw the sacrifice that happened just so she could be back at the place where she wanted to be and live. That had a real big impact on my life. My mom served as a missionary. She serves a mission every month, once a month, probably for the last 50 years, guys. She takes a meal every month just to help people out. Now, it used to be where she would prepare the meal actually at the mission place. Have me out there serving the food and everything. That's Sunday night I can't do anything. I'm with my mom, right? I'm a church boy. I'm a mama's boy. And so I'm doing all these things with her. But it taught me something. It taught me how to give to people. And my mom was consistent. I can't remember a Sunday my mom didn't go to church. Snowstorm, they're trying to figure it out. I just cannot remember a time that she wasn't steeped with God, the scriptures, and people that love God and His Word. And it permeates our family. It permeates what we do. It's just the overall part of our fabric. The reason I got my 2 little ones here is that, you know, hopefully something just bleeds into their ears. Because this is the makeup of what we are as a family. Right at my senior year of high school, I contacted